Sorry about that abrupt ending. A little technical difficulty here. I don't really know how to use my equipment. And if I start again now, I know I'm going to get two layers talking, one over the top of the other. So I just made a break. See how far I get along this time. Okay. Patches came to dine at the deer buffet. He was a wild cat, and he ate whatever was going. I saw him eat tomatoes, and I saw him eat ripe cantaloupes. I didn't know cats ate raw vegetables. My grandmother, on her isolated farm in the wilds of Nova Scotia, used to set out table scraps for the wildlife. She sent me, or whoever was handy, out back of the woodshed to scrape the dinner scraps onto a flat boulder where the old weedy pasture met with the edge of the dark forest. I was doing the same thing at Mr. Z's. One night I put out a couple of fish heads. Everything disappeared. Patches must have got those fish heads. He managed to keep his coat looking so shiny. But we didn't see much of Patches until the middle of September. He was just the spook that sang in the night. Patches made his first formal overture toward us 2 days before we saw him lying in the damp bird-bathing gully on the front lawn. I had come down the 3 back steps from the east veranda and was about to go out through the white picket gate with a little airplane above it. It was daytime. There was Patches, lying outside the fence on the hot brown grass. He did not run away as he usually did when I got sight of him. Instead, he got up and walked toward me. I stopped inside the gate. Patches stopped. He sat on his haunches in a tall pose, 6 feet in front of me, facing me, and he looked into my eyes. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking into me. Hoo boy, was I getting a brain scan or what? The last time I'd been under scrutiny like that was when Jerry and I were at the U.S. Embassy in Vancouver having our final interviews for our permanent resident visa cards. I stood my ground with Patches because I didn't want to have to tell Jerry I had lost out on a stare down with a cat. Patches had green eyes, marbled like agates. I tried to keep my mind in neutral and see if I could pick up on any incoming telepathic messages. I couldn't. After a long minute of this gripping gaze business, Patches let go of me. He turned his back to me, stretched out in the hot, dry grass, and didn't look at me again. What was going on? I didn't have to call in a cat psychologist to find out. That same night, I got up from our outdoor bed to make a trip into the house to the bathroom. Beside the back door on the east veranda was the kitchen table. We'd moved out there when the weather got hot. On the table was a blue cotton cloth with a wide lace border. I had sewn the tablecloth. It was cerulean blue. In the middle of the tablecloth, sharply defined in the starlight, swelling and shrinking with each breath, was the big shape of a sleeping cat. In the afternoon, what Patches had been doing was interviewing his new landlady. Apparently, I had passed the test. "Here comes your friend," Jerry said. It was Jerry's day off, and we were sitting on our folding aluminum chairs, lawn chairs at the back of the house. 3 fig trees made a dappled shade on the grass, and there was room for us to sit under them and eat our lunch. It was tomato season, so we were having a tomato and lettuce sandwich with a glass of milk. I had told Jerry how Patches had looked at me so oddly the day before, and how I had seen the cat sleeping on the table. I looked toward the garden shed, and there came Patches. He squeezed underneath the fence, through the hole the skunks used when they came into the yard in the evenings, and he was walking directly toward us. "Wonder what's on its mind," Jerry said. "Have you been feeding it lately?" "Not a bite," I said. "I haven't put out a scrap for at least a week. I was hoping the cat would go back to its own home." Patches lay down on the green grass at our feet. Without looking at either of us, he began to meow softly. "I don't think it has a home," Jerry said. I said, "Neither do I, but we can't keep it. We'll be moving in 3 months. We don't even know yet where we're going to live." "It's a nice-looking animal, though," Jerry said. "The fur has a healthy sheen, and I like the way the colors are broken into patches." He bit off a corner of his tomato slice and tossed it on the grass. "Here," he said, "are you hungry, Patches?" The cat rose, pounced on the tomato, gulped it, then came and stretched out at our feet again. "Look at that," Jerry said. "Did you ever see a cat eat a tomato before?" I had. "A cat has to be really hungry to eat a tomato," Jerry said. The cat began to purr. Few sounds are more beguiling than that of a cat purring at one's feet. "I hate to see an animal be hungry," Jerry said. "Do you think we should give it a little milk?" I took a big bite of my sandwich and chewed it slowly. We both knew we were at the squeeze point of the funnel. We were toying with a stick of dynamite, and the fuse was sputtering. When Jerry finished his sandwich, he sat on the grass and rubbed the cat's ears. "You like that, don't you, Patches?" he said. The cat rolled over for a tummy rub. I felt spiderwebs, gossamer, invisible but strong, shooting out from the cat and tangling us all together. We had been attracted to stray animals before. There had been Porkchop, the drenched puppy on Vancouver Island that we'd taken in out of the rain on a drizzly Christmas Eve. There'd been Ranfurly, the lovely collie who lay curled outside our travel trailer with frost on his back in the lonesome campsite in northern Alberta, and Ranfurly's friend, the sick grey cat. There'd been Timmy in Nova Scotia that Blanche Craig offered to give us, and we almost took, even though we were 3,000 miles from home. "If Patches is a female," I said to Jerry, "we'll have to get her fixed." "He isn't," Jerry said. "I just checked." "He probably has worms," I said. "He'll need shots." "I can take care of that," Jerry said. "I have shots at the pharmacy." "What if we have to live in an apartment," I said, "when we move up to the Shasta Valley?" "We won't," Jerry said. "Before it's time to go, we're going to drive up there for a weekend and buy ourselves a house." I said, "Maybe the skunks won't come in the yard if Patches is here all the time." I said, "I've got a chipped cereal bowl that will make a good feeding dish." I went into the house for the dish and a jug of milk, and we carried them over by the back fence under the plum tree. This was a solemn moment. Jerry held the dish. I poured the milk. Jerry set the dish on the grass. Jerry said, "With this milk we do thee wed." The cat meowed a demure "I do," and drank. When the bowl was empty, Patches sat back, licked the rusty-colored patch on his nose, licked a gray and white paw, rubbed his face with it, and flashed us a look that said, "More." We poured him another round. That's how Patches came to us when we were living in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. But the story doesn't end here. Not by a long shot. After that, Patches lived in the yard. He ate Walmart special kitty instead of tomatoes and cantaloupes. At night, he slept on my blue tablecloth. During the day, he slept in the little damp ditch I had made with my hoe by the rose bushes. He did not keep the skunks out of the yard. One evening at dusk, Jerry and I saw Patches sitting tall and prim and patient beside his feeding dish under the plum tree, while a black skunk with a broad white stripe down its back ate Patches' dinner. Tawny and Blackie and the rest of the neighborhood cats continued to visit Patches in our yard and to serenade us at night. Sometimes his friends came to call on him during the daytime, and we noticed that there was a pattern to the visits. The more we watched the cats, the more we felt that our Patches was a high-ranking figure in cat society. One day in the fall, I came out the back door of Mr. Z's house for my sundown walk. The sun was setting early, and I had time to go out and get back again before Jerry arrived home from work. Sunsets in the Sacramento Valley were spectacular, regardless of whether or not there were clouds in the sky. The air was filled with dust particles from the farmers working the rice crops or burning the dry crop residue, and every night the western sky burned in crimson flames, and reds and oranges and yellows, and I loved to be out during the show. As I came down the back steps of the east veranda, 2 cats began winding up for a song just outside the fence. I walked to the gate and stood with my elbows on the top rail watching. The cats paid no attention to me. One was Patches, the other was Tawny, the blonde cat with the white on its throat. They were standing, facing, noses 1 foot apart. I had heard a lot of cat songs during the spring, summer, and fall, and I could tell from the warm-up that they were not going to be doing the tornado siren aria. When this song opened, it had the sentimental quality of an old Western love ballad. She sighed as she whispered, "Mañana," Patches began, "never dreaming that we were parting." Next, the volume rose to maximum, but there were no piercing shrieks. The posture of each cat was relaxed as they went through the verses together, and then they took turns. First, Patches made piteous-sounding moans like a lovesick cowboy. "South of the border," he wailed, and then Tawny wailed in with "Down Mexico way," while Patches did the guitar strum. The song spoke of great western skies and flaming sunsets. As the song reached its climax, the sounds rose in pitch and sharpened until they were on the razor edge of screaming. An electric ripple started in the fur on Patch's neck, traveled all the way down his spine, and ended with a sharp flick on the tip of his tail. The cats came closer together until their noses touched lightly. They parted, they moved in again and touched foreheads. Each gesture was slow and ritualized like an ancient Japanese dance. They parted, they touched foreheads a second time, and Patches gave a slight pressure, a push, that seemed to say, "Just you remember who's the star of this show, and we'll get along fine." Not all the cat meetings in our yard were sing-alongs. There were times when the fur did fly. When Patches gave that little forehead push, Tawny, although he didn't miss a beat of the song, moved back 1 step and said, "Yes, sir," by sitting down. Patches soon sat down himself, and the concert continued for another 3 or 4 minutes until he gave the signal that the show was over. The signal was always the same, and Patches was always the one to give it. First he turned his head and looked intently into the grass at a spot 3 feet away from his right shoulder. He had stopped singing. When I first saw him do this, I thought he had seen a mouse. Actually, what he was saying to Tawny was, "Some important business has come up that requires my immediate attention." Patches kept his eyes riveted to the spot as he rose to his feet in slow motion. He stretched his legs until they were as tall and as stiff as he could make them. Behold the great hunter and lord of his domain. He took 4 stiff-legged steps toward his invisible prey. Then his posturing was over. Without a backward glance, Patches lay down in the hot, long yellow grass. He closed his eyes and began to plan the program for his next vocal engagement. Tawny, meanwhile, had spied his own imaginary mouse. He stared, he rose, he stretched, he stiffened, and he strutted. Then Tawny relaxed and ambled down the hill past the orange trees and away. I went in the opposite direction, down Putnam Drive, past the eucalyptus trees so fragrant, and off into the torrid sunset. And this looks like a good place to make another break, so I'll do that.